Hi everyone, this is Les Muller from Data Leaders. Today I have on the show Detlef Nauck. Detlef is the Chief Research Scientist for Data Science at BT. He is speaking at our Data Leaders Transformation Roundtable, and today I have him as a guest on the show. Detlef, welcome to the Data Leaders podcast.
Thanks, Les.
Brilliant. And for those in the audience who don't know you yet, can you just tell us a bit about yourself and your journey to becoming the Chief Research Scientist for Data Science over at BT?
Yeah, sure. I trained as a computer scientist back in Germany and started out on a kind of a standard university career, doing my PhD and becoming a lecturer. And then at a conference in San Francisco, I met somebody from BT Research who invited me to come for a fellowship. And then after that fellowship, they offered me a position here at BT. And I'm here since 1999, haven't left. It's a great environment to work in. And data analysis, machine learning was always my background. And I'm looking at the exciting research in that space and how you can create value for the company out of that.
And you definitely have a strong background. I mean, ultimately, what really compelled you to become a professional working in data science?
Okay, I was always interested in machine learning. And, I did my MSc on neural networks. So this idea that you can learn from data and without programming a solution, but discover what the solution is from data always fascinated me. So I kept involved in that space. And the other aspect that interested me is how do you understand what these learning systems are doing? So how do you get insight out of them? And so that had a natural application in data analytics. So getting insight out of data and solving problems by doing that.
Sounds great. It sounds like definitely a field that suits you. And you will be speaking at our Data Leaders Transformation Roundtable later this month, so this November on the 27th. It will be a very exciting session, quite interactive as well, and it's titled Best Practice Analytics. So definitely your strong suit. I mean, why did you choose this topic ultimately?
Okay, best practice I think is very important in the area of data analytics. When you look at what people are doing, you see that there's a lot of kind of craft, and it's almost like a cottage industry around. So you have experts analyzing data with the tools that they like. And you often find that things are not reproducible. So somebody produces a result, but you don't really know, can you trust it? And you find this especially if you work with people who are more used to work in Excel and like of reporting tools. And so you don't really see what is it that they do to the data and how do they get to their results. And because these results are used for decision making, it's essential that they're correct and that the data they're using is of good quality. And so that got me to this idea of looking into best practice. How should you actually do data analysis in a corporate environment? And that leads to ideas around that you should test your data, that you have to understand what's in your data. And anytime you change your data, you have to reassess this. You have to check the models that you're building. You have to make sure that they perform in a way that you think they should be performing, and that the results are actually worth making decisions upon. And so I'm looking at how to develop a framework around this and how to make sure that in a corporate setting that you can trust these results that you're getting.
And where did you draw the inspiration from? So are there any real life examples that you structured the session around? Maybe some success projects or anything in your past that you've done that kind of predicated the materials to be presented?
Yes, I mean in BT we have a long-standing history of using data analytics and AI in our own processes. So for example, the BT workforce is scheduled and managed by an AI system. We're using systems to optimize the network layouts that we are producing. And this is all driven by data. And we're doing a lot of predictive analytics in our processes where our processes look at data, make a decision or a prediction, and based on that, we are driving the process forward. And there are a lot of examples in the company where we have used this. And early on, when I joined BT, I looked into how can you automate this process? How can you support analysts in automating what they're doing, which also helps them to do the correct thing? And this is the kind of things I'm looking at and that I'm trying to downstream into the company.
And so it sounds like you guys definitely done some interesting work in the past. I mean, if you think about it, what were your main challenges along that journey?
The main challenge is always around accessing data and getting good data quality and understanding what's in the data. And when you look at anything that is done in data science, data analytics, it's 80 to 90% data preparation and data wrangling before you can actually start the analytic process. And that is it. I think the larger the organization, the more challenging that process becomes. And getting data organized well is a huge challenge, and it's kind of against human nature. So people don't want to spend time on describing the data sources that they generate. And businesses tend not to incentivize people to do this. And so you always find a lot of challenge around what sort of data is available, how do I get to it, in what shape is it, and what does it actually mean before you can kickstart any kind of analytical process. Mm-hmm. And, another thing in a corporate environment is typically getting the right tools, because you have IT policies that control what sort of software you're allowed to use. You're never completely free and using the latest open source software that you might want to use. So working in this kind of policy setting is another challenge.
Mm-hmm. It definitely sounds like you had a lot to contend with. So both human nature and the legal side of things. And I mean, evidently you delivered some very impressive results. I mean, what kind of strategies, techniques, tools, mindset, and approaches you think that really allowed you to succeed?
Well, in the end, it is basically try not to be discouraged by the data situation. So keep soldiering on. You'll get somewhere. And it's also worth realizing that you don't need the latest, shiniest software to solve a problem. Going to the basics and applying machine learning and statistics from whatever tools that you have available is probably good enough. You don't need the latest technology. It's typically never about the technology. It's about understanding the data that you have and applying best practice and being rigorous about the techniques you're using, not so much the software.
That's some very valuable advice. It might be even a bit counterintuitive to a lot of our listeners. So very good advice. So just keep soldiering on and just keep the motivation up and don't be distracted by the shiny new things and the new technologies, but look for best practice.
Exactly.
And
you typically find that you can't buy yourself out of these kind of problems. So people sometimes think, oh, I just invest money in the latest software and it will magically resolve all the problems I have in that space. And my presentations, I typically tell people there's no AI-shaped or data analytics-shaped hole in your organization where you could plug a solution in. It doesn't work like this. It's about changing the culture, about how you deal with your data and how you analyze data and how you integrate it into decision-making.
Yeah, so the shortcut does not exist. So the hack won't get you there. It's hard work and motivation and best practice. Brilliant. And I mean, in hindsight, I mean, what would you spend less time on if you look back at your career?
The way I see it, everything I've done led me to where I am. So I wouldn't say there's anything in the past where I would say I shouldn't have done that in that sense. You can take learning from it, from everything you do. And everything that I've come across in that field, even if it didn't work out. I mean, there are a lot of projects where I would say, okay, we started looking at stuff and then we abandoned it. You can still take some learning from it for the next project and understand, okay, if the data looks like this, don't bother, try something else. And so I think working in research means you have to live with failure. And if you don't fail, you're not being creative and innovative.
And that's actually a brilliant answer. So, all the choices, kind of led up to this moment, and that's what really allowed you to learn and accumulate the experience. And so if you think about then, what would you prioritize? So what would you do more of based on the things that you've learned?
It's probably worthwhile spending more time on organizing data and getting it into shape for analytics and raising the awareness that this is important. You find in a lot of organization, data is created to drive the operational systems, right? So nobody thought of data of being valuable. It is there because you need it to drive your operations. And this mindset that you can get insight from this data and create value from it has come relatively slowly into organizations. And probably it's worthwhile spending, or could have spent more time on creating this awareness and saying you should really think of the analytics before you design the system that will generate the data that you need to run it. It's a little bit like IT security. If you bolt it on later, it's usually no good. If you build a system that serves customers or whatever, and you think, oh, I should analyze it, it's probably too late. You should think about these things right from the design of any kind of system or solution. What is it that this system will produce in terms of data, and how can I create value from it?
I think that's great advice for any data professional out there to to get their data in shape and kind of think ahead strategically, so you are prepared when it's needed. And to talk about your session, so best practice analytics, it will be a presentation around 20 minutes in the beginning, you presenting to the audience, and then we will have Q&A and also an interactive group discussion. But I mean, what are the main focus areas of your session, and what are the takeaways?
Okay, I would say the main focus is reproducibility. So how do you run an analytic project so you can reproduce the results later? And that is essential because in that space, you can't guarantee that what you do is correct. But if you make it reproducible, then somebody else can check it. So if somebody can get to the same result that you got to, then you can start establishing trust in what you do. And you can get other people to check it. And if you have to revisit a decision that you made based on analytics, you can go back and see, what did I do to get there? And so the kind of things I'm going to talk about is, how can you test your data? How can you check data provenance and data quality and make sure that after you have wrangled it to analyze it, that it's still in a correct shape? Then about how do you do modeling? How do you test your models? How do you make sure that the models that you're building are fit for purpose and actually give good results? And how can you trust them going forward? How do you find out that you no longer can trust them and you have to build new ones? And how can you support teams and collaboration in that space? So it's no longer that the single expert analyst goes and locks themselves into an office for a couple of weeks and wrangles some data and comes out with an answer. It's teams of people who have to do this, and you need to be able to combine their work, and you have to version their work, you have to merge it, and you need support for these kind of things. And we can look to software development, and test-driven development as an inspiration, how we can do this. This is still an area that's very much under development, but it's worthwhile. It's a good time now to think about these things and invest in the right kind of technology and set up the right kind of cultural ways of working around these things.
Sounds very interesting. And you will also have a very strong audience. So it will be for 35 senior professionals. Everyone is working in a data-related function. So data management, data science, analytics, data governance, and people from all kinds of different industries, including consumer goods, financial services, technology, healthcare. I mean, who in the audience you think will benefit most from the session?
I think anyone who has to manage a data science area, teams that do analytics, who has to make decisions about what sort of tools and systems to deploy, can benefit from a session like this to understand what are the trends and techniques and tools in that space.
Wonderful. And on all these sessions, we really try to focus on the implementables. We want to make sure that the attendees walk away with more than just interesting ideas, but they can actually put the learnings into practice back in their businesses. I mean, in the case of your session, so how will the audience members be able to kind of put the session's insights into practice back in their businesses?
Okay, a lot of it is about how you do stuff. And I'll give some examples which are kind of pretty much technical. So you can see how you can follow these kind of principles. And this can be handed over directly to data science teams and analysts, that this is a way that they could follow best practice. Unfortunately, it's still a developing area, so you cannot just buy a best practice solution and deploy it. You will have to change the way people work. And that means you have to communicate to them how they can test and check quality and on all levels. And so I'll give some examples on that.
Fantastic. Now, we all look forward to it. And without giving too much away, so if you had to capture only one key idea from the session, what would that be and why?
I think the key idea is reproducibility. So the challenge I would put to anybody in data science: can you reproduce the result, your latest result? Can you rerun everything and come to the same result?
Wonderful. Very, very valuable. So yeah, Detlef, we all look forward to it. And to kind of move on to the next session of the interview, I mean, I think it would be a shame not to ask someone like you about future technology. So are there any kind of trends and technologies that you are, really excited about today?
Okay, so what we're seeing in data analytics, data science, moving into the AI space is new ways of learning from data. So there's a large hype around AI at the moment. And if you look back a couple of years, you see this is kind of following the trend of data science into AI. It's a lot of rebranding of the same things. But what has driven this is new technologies of learning from data, which are based on the same principles in 1980s and 1990s, but they're powered now by more computational power, larger data sets. And you can do a lot of interesting things in that space. And I think one area to watch for me would be what's called explainable AI. So if you think that you have an AI system that creates insight from data for you, how do you know how it does that? And how do you know that what it gives you as an advice or as a prediction is any good? And especially in kind of topics around GDPR, if you apply AI systems to people, you have to think about the ethical component. So what sort of decisions do you make about people? Can you justify them? And if you do this machine-driven, you need to have this insight into these systems. And I think this is a very exciting research area which will come into application and will help us to better understand what these systems are doing and get more value out of them.
And it sounds like there's a lot of potential in that, and I'm curious to find out a few years from now, how you actually leverage that. But yeah, very exciting stuff. And yeah, Detlef, we actually arrived at the final stage of the interview, which is the quickfire round. So you probably know that I usually ask our guests just a couple questions. It's less about technology and less about their sessions per se. It's more about their areas of interest. And these are just a couple of questions, and you will have around 30 seconds each to give me an amazing answer. So whenever you're ready.
Sure, go ahead.
Brilliant. So the first one is, what is the biggest mistake that you almost made?
Oh, that would have been not to accept the fellowship at BT, which led me to the position where I am now. I had some squabbles with the administration back at university while I was still a lecturer there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I wanted to ask whether it crossed your mind, but I guess there were some, potential administrative obstacles in the way. But thankfully, they didn't stand in your way.
Yes, exactly. So it's important to overcome these things.
Brilliant. And what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Well, probably pick up as many books as you can, because if there's only one good idea in a book, then it's worth reading it. That's something that my dad used to tell me.
Okay, yeah, definitely sounds like a valuable piece of advice, and it kind of leads me to my next question. What is your most influential book, and why?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because I would say it's always the last book that I'm reading, and I was thinking about it. What could be the most valuable book? Probably books by Malcolm Gladwell, like Blink and Outliers. I found very interesting because they got me thinking about how people make decisions. But otherwise, currently I'm reading Weapons of Math Destruction by Cathy O'Neill, which is a very good book for data scientists to pick up. So it's typically the book that I'm currently reading that influences me most.
Okay, super interesting. So you said Cathy O'Neill, Weapons of Mass Destruction?
Yeah, of math, like mathematical.
Oh, math destruction. Okay, yeah, it did sound interesting, but we'll definitely leave the title in the show notes so the audience members can check it out. And next question is, what is your favorite quote and how do you put that into practice?
Yeah, again, that I wouldn't know. I don't think I have a favorite quote. It's I tend not to get influenced by people and what they say so much. I would say so. I get more influenced by ideas, and I would say, machine learning, how things learn from data, and these things influence me, but not so much what people say.
Okay, well, maybe some of the audience members now have a new favorite quote. I think earlier in the conversation you said, "Get your data in shape," which is, I think it's a great quote. Maybe we will share it on Twitter. So, and the last question is, what advice would you give new and inspiring data leaders?
Oh yeah, be rigorous and resilient. So you have to keep at it and make sure that what you do is rigorous and as correct as it can be.
Brilliant. I think everyone can take this to heart, and they will only benefit from this. Well, Detlef, thank you so much for your time. It's been very informative and super interesting to find out about your background, and we all, really look forward to having you at the roundtable, and our audience members. I think I can speak to our members as well. Do you have anything else that you would like to add, or would you like to continue the conversation later this month on the roundtable itself?
No, thank you very much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this event. I think it's a great idea to have these roundtable events with peers who all have the same background and have the same kind of hands-on experience. I think that's very valuable to do.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Detlef, and well, I'll meet you soon.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.